I watched Trump's meeting today with leaders of the armed forces, so you don't have to, and here's my overview. We'll jump right into it. He spoke for about 70 minutes, mentioned Biden 10 different times, and mentioned the auto pen on 7 different occasions. Right at the beginning, Kegseth is introducing him, and Pete says that his compass is clear and that he's very easy to follow. So listen to this, and you just let me know if you think any of this is easy to follow. He starts off by saying, if you don't like what I'm saying, then you can leave the room. But if you do, you'll be stripped of your career and your rank. So basically, he's going to fire you if you disagree with what he's saying. He says that he almost fired Kegseth after he gave his speech just preceding this. Why? Because the speech was so good and he didn't want to have to give a speech after that. He also says that we've won every war when we were the Department of War, but since then we've become woke and we've now been losing wars because we're woke. He says that the left is full of bad people, but they're just giving up at this point because they're tired of Trump. He then goes on to say that it should have always been the Gulf of America because we had 92% of the frontage. He repeats that number, 92%. Just for reference, this would be what we have, and then this all would be what Mexico has, and then this would be what Cuba has over here, but apparently it's 92%. He says we want it to be named the Department of War because we want no more wars. And then he says that, of course, had he been president, the war in Ukraine would have just never happened. He admits that nothing has been solved in the Middle East, but says that if that gets solved between Israel and Palestine, then that will be 8+ wars that he's solved, just 8 to infinity, somewhere in there. He also says that if that one is solved, then he's going to give himself credit for 2 or 3 wars for that one getting solved. Just extra ticks on the tally mark. He says, again, he's talking to generals and admirals, that he doesn't want to show them the after effects of a nuclear weapon, even though that probably is something they've seen because it's been well documented since World War II. He also says that there's 2 N-words, and one of them is nuclear, and then proceeds to say the N-word 7 different times. I don't know if he just watched American History X, but he says that in inner cities, there are people who are shooting at firemen when they're on their ladders just trying to save people. He says that everyone loves his signature and everyone hates Biden's signature, and then says that he saved millions of lives by ending the conflict between India and Pakistan, which I will remind you, the leaders of both India and Pakistan have said that he had little to no involvement in any of that at all. He says that he wants the Nobel Peace Prize for solving 8+ wars, but says it's probably instead going to go to someone who writes about how crazy he is, and then says that he doesn't want it personally, of course, he just wants it for the country. He tells the weird anecdote that when he was in the Oval Office with the leaders of Azerbaijan and Armenia, that they were so far apart on opposite sides of the room that he's never seen people so far apart in his life. And then over the course of the meeting, they kept inching closer. And then by the end, they were just hugging each other. He also then tells the other false anecdote where someone came in and said, there's $31 billion and we have no idea where it came from. And he said, well, go check the tariff shelf. And they said, but tariffs haven't started coming in from that sector yet. And he says, no, go check it. And they apparently leave and come back in 20 minutes later after having checked the tariff shelf and said, you know what, that was it. That was exactly where it came from. He says we're not going to build anything out of aluminum because aluminum melts as soon as it sees a missile coming at it. He then says that aluminum melts when a missile is 2 miles away from it. He then, with no context at all, says that bullets are way cheaper to make than missiles. Wow. He goes on a rant for like 10 minutes about merit and merit-based systems, even though he is one of the, if not the least qualified person to ever hold the position that he currently sits in. He says, even though he's apparently ended every war that has ever gone on, that we're going to spend over $1 trillion in the military. So while he's saving the American taxpayer money, he's going to increase the budget on the thing that we spend the most money on anyways. And then this is just how easily he's swindled. He says that he wasn't going to name the 6th generation fighter jet, but that Boeing came in and said, we want to name it the F-47. And he said he had to think about that for 2 seconds and it was like, hell yeah. He then also says that he was the 45th, 46th, and 47th president of the United States, but he doesn't want to take credit for anything that happened during the 46th term because it was so bad under Biden, even though he apparently was president. He's just saying 2020 was rigged again. He's still saying to a bunch of military leaders that Canada should be the 51st state. Okay. And then he's still saying that $17 trillion in investment has come into the United States, which again, the White House, if you go on the whitehouse.gov right now, the first thing that's available to click is the list of the investments that have come in from foreign and domestic companies. And it shows $8.8 trillion right now. The whitehouse.gov is saying that. And I have also fact checked that number of 8.8 trillion, and it's complete BS because it includes things like 50% of the GDP from UAE for over a decade, which is insane. Even though, again, he's the president of peace and there are no new wars that are going to happen, he wants to build 19 new Navy ships next year. And then he says that aesthetically, he doesn't like the way they look. And even though the people tell him it's about stealth, it's not really about stealth. It's just about the way that they look, and he wants them to look differently, and he wants to start building battleships again. And then he says that the B-2 was all about stealth, and that's why they were able to bomb Iran, again, as the president of peace. He says that he wouldn't want to be on a refueling plane because they hold hundreds of thousands of gallons of fuel, and you don't even want to know what happens if one of them gets shot. I mean, I just Googled it. They hold 55,000 gallons of fuel. I don't know why he feels he must lie and or just talk about a topic that he knows nothing about in front of people who know about that topic. He calls Democrats the enemy from within and then says that they are comparable to the vicious enemies that the military has to be fighting. So he's just comparing the party that directly opposes him to our military enemies, which is just, I can't see a single problem with that. He claims again that 25 million people came in, which he admits is just a number that he thinks. He has no proof of that. He did used to say 21 million and then just changed it to 25 one day. And then he says that that invasion of the US is no different than if a foreign country had been invading us. The only difference is if it was a foreign country, they'd be wearing uniforms. He calls the people that were around Biden radical left lunatics and says that they're very brilliant individuals, but they're very dumb when it comes to policy. I'm just going to remind you, Umberto Eco and others have pointed out in their writings on fascism that one of the main tenets is you must portray your enemy as both weak and incredibly strong at the same time. So he's sleepy Joe Biden, but he was able to rig an election when he wasn't even in power. You know, things like that. He says that he doesn't even believe it, but for the past 4 months, no one has crossed the border illegally. And he says that even though that information is coming from a leftist group, he has to believe it because obviously the border is going to be so good. He then says that Portland is like a war zone. It's like World War II and the entire city is burning down. And he says he knows that because he's getting plenty of images out of Portland. And apparently the leaders in Portland are just lying to him when they say that it's not burning down. He says again that 300,000 people died of drug overdoses last year. I will remind you the number is between 80 and 100,000. He also says that every ship that comes in from Venezuela or every boat that comes in from Venezuela represents 25,000 dead Americans. And then he says that they've blown up 4 of them. I only knew about 2, and just because he posted them on his True Social. He called protesters insurrectionists and said that they're paid by George Soros and the radical left. And then he says that there has been no crime in DC in weeks. Nothing. No assaults, no drunk driving, no murders, nothing. Zero crime in a major U.S. city for weeks, apparently. He says when he's walking down the stairs, he can only think about not falling because he doesn't want that to be part of his legacy, even though the fact that he's a rapist and a felon and a war criminal will also be part of his legacy. He doesn't care about those things. He also says that he hated everything about Obama, but he was really impressed with how fast Obama could go down the stairs without trying. You guys aren't going to believe this one. He says that a year ago we were a dead country and now we're the hottest country in the world. He says that was told to him by all the leaders in the Middle East, every single person at NATO, and now he's claiming that Putin also told him that when they met in Alaska. He would swear to you that he's not a Russian propagandist, but he says he's really disappointed in Putin because that war should have been over in just a week. He should have been able to knock it out in just a week. He reiterates what he said yesterday, which is that every leader in the world wants to be on the board of peace, but he's going to do the very selfless act of leading that, even though he's a very, very busy man. He then says that every country in NATO calls him the president of NATO. 10%ers, I also watched the press speech that he gave on the drug prices being reduced, which was also absolutely insane. So that's what you're going to get right after I post this video. I'll be making that one.